Let me have your attention for a minute. This is something for the ladies. I'm chilling with the queens of the Stoned Age.
Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to Queens of the Stoned Age, the show where queens, ladies, get together and talk about stuff while we smoke weed sometimes. I'm Mira Gonzalez. I am your managing editor for Mary Jane, which is a cannabis-focused media platform run by our Lord and Savior, Snoop Dogg. Please remember to follow us and like us on iTunes. That's how, or Apple Podcasts, whatever it's called now. That's how this show gets to keep happening, and it makes my bosses like me more. So thank you for that. I'm here with my guest, OK Kaya, who is a lovely musician slash actress slash model slash wonderful person. How are you?
Slashy.
Slashy.
Yeah. How are
That's
you?
good. I'm good. Yeah. Chilling, hanging out. So you just recently came out with an album. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And what's it called?
It's called Both.
Nice. And so I was reading online while I was stalking you that you released your first, is this your first album?
Yep.
And you released it on your own label.
Yeah.
Amazing. What is that? How is that experience versus, you know, a lot of people I think tend to go through more major label routes for like their first albums at least. That must have been,
Yeah.
Is it cool to have that much creative control over your own music?
Yeah, I loved all the control. I didn't love all the work.
Yeah.
But,
yeah, absolutely.
But it was cool. I got to name my own label. That was the most fun part of having your own label.
Got to name it. And what did you name it?
Heavy Body Records.
I like that. Very nice. Where did that name come from?
A paint that my mom has. She's a painter. It's an acrylic paint called Heavy Body.
Ah, so your mom's a painter. So did you grow up in a family of artists generally then?
Yeah, pretty much.
Is that kind of how you got started with music? Was it just generally being in a family of artists, or did you start with other types of art before you did music?
I remember singing as a kid, and that was cool. And my mom always played a lot of records.
Yeah. What types of records did she play?
All kinds of records. I remember when we had a car for a minute, she would play Mariah Carey a lot and Cypress Hill.
It's a great combo.
Cypress Hill?
Classic combo.
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's great. And so you grew up in Oslo, in Norway, is that correct?
I grew up on a peninsula outside of Oslo.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
And so you moved to the States when?
2009.
2009?
Yeah.
Got it. So you spent a long time here, like the majority of your life.
I live here now.
Yeah. And you like it, I assume?
Yeah.
That's good.
That's
good. What was it like sort of moving from Oslo as a child coming to the States? Was that kind of jarring experience, or did it feel like you were right at home the second you got here?
I am technically American.
You are?
Yeah. My dad is American.
Okay.
And I was born in New Jersey.
Oh.
Shh, don't tell anyone.
We'll bleep it out. Don't worry.
Yeah, but 6 weeks later I moved to Norway, and then I lived in Norway until I was 18. So I'm just like I'm confused, but I feel kind of American, obviously.
We're all confused.
Yeah.
You know, that makes sense.
Confused Americans.
And so, again, when I was lurking you online before you got here, I was reading that before you were a musician, you started out doing modeling and acting. So how did you make that transition from doing modeling and acting to making music like you do now?
It's all about being really bored.
That'll do a lot.
So, yeah, I guess I was just really bored modeling. I wasn't really acting before. I did my first acting gig was last year, I guess.
Okay. And what was that?
It was this Norwegian horror movie? Is it horror?
Online, I read psychological thriller.
Yeah, that's better. I wouldn't call it horror.
Yeah, it's called Thelma, is that right?
Yeah.
Nice. And that was last year?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was your first movie?
Yeah.
Wow. And
first
so
time acting.
Was that a good experience? Do you have fun with that?
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah?
I really liked the director.
That's great. Who's the director?
His name is Joachim Trier.
Okay. And he's a Norwegian director?
Yeah.
Amazing.
He's directed a few very sad films.
I love sad films.
I liked when I was growing up. Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Great. And so you started out as a model doing like fashion modeling stuff mainly?
Yeah.
Like catalogs or?
Catalogs, a lot of foot modeling.
Foot modeling. How did that come about? The foot stuff specifically?
They didn't like my face.
Well, I think you have a very nice face.
Thank you.
Wow. And so the modeling, you didn't find it being super stimulating?
I still model a lot now, and I really like it, and I'm really grateful just being able to travel and
Definitely
make some money and stuff.
Yeah.
But it's not really like stimulating for the brain. Maybe.
Creatively. That makes sense for sure.
Yeah.
And so when did you start making music in a professional way? Like when did you start, putting it all together and thinking, I'm going to make this into an album?
4 years ago, maybe.
Okay, so
Yeah.
relatively recently.
Yeah.
And how did that begin? Did you meet somebody who was involved in music, or did you just come to your own realizing you loved it?
I put my music on SoundCloud, and this A&R dude found it and helped me out a lot and became my manager for a little while. And so he like just did all the industry stuff that I don't know,
distribution and all of that stuff.
I was like, oh, okay, cool, I can make music now.
Okay, got it. And so you are working with that A&R company, but then on your own label. So there's like...
Yeah, I actually don't work with that person anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, there's like a little... I have my own label, but there's like people that work with me.
Right. Well, I think any label, probably takes more than one person to be able to exist,
Yeah,
I imagine.
it takes 3 to release an indie record.
It takes 3.
Yeah.
Only 3, not 1 or 2 or 5?
3.
Huh. And what brought you to that number specifically?
With just that we were 3 making this record.
Oh, I see. And that's like you think you want to work with 3 people from now on?
No, I think that's it's way too few people.
Way too few, yeah. I would imagine so.
Yeah.
That definitely...
I don't recommend it.
Mm-hmm. And so it seems like you've sort of started out your career in doing arts and just sort of jumped from art to art to art to art. Is that sort of something that you've always known you were going to do? Did you ever... Because personally, I also grew up with a family of artists. And so for me, growing up with a family of artists, obviously they have always been supportive of anything that I wanted to do. But specifically, going into an artistic field was something that was kind of just expected. Like, I don't think my parents ever thought, you're going to go be a mathematician or something like that. If I had, I think they would have supported it. But I definitely, felt a certain amount of, I don't want to say pressure, but like a certain amount of my family being excited when I did want to enter an artistic field. Did you feel similarly? Do you think that your parents encouraged you to pursue that sort of career?
I don't think they have or had that many expectations of me.
That's helpful.
Yeah, I think it was. But I don't know. I don't know what that feels like.
So there was never like a, why don't you go to college instead of pursuing, this or that thing?
I still haven't gone to college.
Neither have I. I dropped out.
Oh, nice.
I was like, this is too expensive. Although I guess that's not as much of an issue in Oslo. No,
yeah. It was always my plan B, so I might still go,
Okay. What would you go for if you did?
I don't think I have to go to college for it, what I want to do, actually. But I do want to learn sign language.
Oh, yeah, that would be amazing. Yeah. What makes you want to learn sign language? Just an interest, or do you have a friend who's not hearing?
No, I like the idea of a language that doesn't have anything to do with amplifying.
Mm-hmm. And do you think that's also why you make music? Is it a way to communicate that is not just speaking? Because personally, that's why I write, because it's like an easier way for me to communicate with people.
Definitely.
Like, to edit it and all of that. Is that sort of why you started with making music?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's probably the best way I can express myself for now.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's something I see a lot in various artistic disciplines, is just people who struggle to express themselves in a traditional way and sort of want to move into another form of expression that is something that they can do privately or easier, or sort of, it's more like internal or something.
Yeah.
Is that something you feel in the other types of art that you do too, with acting or modeling or
it kind of feels like it comes from the same place.
Mm-hmm.
Like the same sensibility or sensitivity or something.
Mm-hmm. Sensitivity to what?
The world. I don't know. I'm not sure where it comes from.
I coming from a family of musicians, I come from a family of people who generally really enjoy performing music, which is something that a lot of musicians do. But I also have a lot of close friends who are musicians who hate performing and wish that they could live their whole musical careers just, releasing things and not having to perform in front of an audience. And, I've always felt as a writer, it's kind of cruel that, you become a writer and then suddenly, you become a writer because you like to do things like privately and not have to be in front of people. And then, suddenly you have to do a reading the second that you write something as successful. How do you feel about performing?
When I'm performing, I feel like I am in the nude, cry wanking on stage in front of people. I don't know if other performers feel that way, but
and like in a bad way, right? Like it's not like a fun cry wanking in front of people, or is it kind of like
sometimes it's like cathartic?
Yeah.
Is that a word? Yeah.
Cathartic. I definitely find crying and wanking cathartic.
Yeah.
So, that makes sense.
Just get you an audience and call it a job.
But if you had a choice, I know that basically musicians kind of don't have a choice at this point. You sort of have to perform. But if you didn't have to, do you think that you still would?
Not as much.
Yeah. You'd spend more of your time writing or more of your time performing to smaller audiences, do you think?
Yeah, I like playing churches.
Yeah.
And small places that aren't necessarily venues or like classic musical venues.
Yeah. Why is that, you think?
I guess it's just a space. It's just like a space that is made for, it just sounds good. Good sounding spaces, small, spiritual.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. So I did want to ask you a little bit about your process for songwriting. So how does that work for you? Is it a very private process? Do you work very closely with somebody else, or how does it begin? What's like the first thing you do when you sit down and say, okay, I'm going to write a song now? Or do you do that?
Usually it's something that cracks me up or makes me sad or that kind of paints a picture.
Mm-hmm. Something that invokes like a strong feelings.
So yeah, it could be like a sentence. And then maybe I'll work from that. Mm-hmm. Or sometimes I just sit down. You know what? I do all kinds of ways.
Yeah.
Just change it up when I get bored. So it's like sometimes I'll write a melody and sometimes I will just be like talking to someone and they say something funny.
Right.
And
so it doesn't always start with the melody or always start with the lyrics. It kind of goes back and forth.
Yeah.
Yeah. Listening to your music, I really loved, and this is going to like sound corny no matter how I say it, I wanted to say I love the honesty in your lyrics. And that feels like very broad, but, I think it felt very, as a poet myself, it felt personal. Like I could see that it was coming from a place that is your actual life and something that you've like experienced. Is that ever difficult for you? It feels, like it can obviously be very cathartic and it can be, extremely like emotionally satisfying, and I definitely like know that firsthand. But I imagine it can also be sort of tough to be so honest with yourself in your lyrics sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's a good way to grow and kind of like look at yourself and just try to be honest with yourself.
Yeah, definitely.
Until you're like a decent human being.
Right. It's kind of like going to therapy or something. You kind of like whittle away at all the bad stuff until eventually you're able to break through the other side.
Yeah, maybe it sounds good while you're doing it.
Yeah.
So that's cool.
Yeah, there's a satisfaction about being able to take like big feelings that are sort of hard to understand and put them into something that's, something that you can present to other people and, be proud of.
Yeah.
I specifically loved the song IUD. I like very recently actually I had like a copper IUD, but I have like terrible periods. So I was just like a year and kind of my periods weren't getting better. So I was like, all right, I'm going to get it taken out. And it's going to end with a story about me talking about my gynecologist. So I hope you don't mind. Okay. But, I went in and they tried to take it out, and the gynecologist I went to was my regular person, and he like, it was just kind of painful, and I was like, it's not working. And then he was like, all right, we're gonna have to put you under to take it out. And I was like, I don't think that makes sense. That's not right. And so I went to another doctor, and they were able to take it out in 2 seconds without any pain, and it was fine. But that experience,
why did that happen?
I honestly think because the first gynecologist I went to it seemed like he was like mad at me for being in pain, like it seemed like he was like, why are you like, just let me do it, like just stop, like why are you telling me that this hurts or something. Like he was like, we have to put you under. And I was like, I just knew that wasn't normal for an IUD procedure. And that experience definitely showed me something that I was lucky to have not seen a ton of before, which is just the vulnerability of women in the healthcare system in the United States, like monetarily and just physically, not having our pain believed and things like that. Your song IUD seemed to be about that, and then simultaneously about you know, and again, I could be totally wrong, correct me, but, you know, the burden that women face during casual sex that men don't, you know, or that people with uteruses face during casual sex that, you know, people who don't have them don't, which is that you can get pregnant, and that if you want to not get pregnant, you have to sort of, you know, go through this healthcare system and through all of this stuff to be able to handle that. Was that something that you intended? Was that like a personal, something that you personally wanted to express in that song?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was considering getting one, and I just wanted to talk to my partner at the time about it, and also everyone else, because it was right when funding was being threatened, or Planned Parenthood's funding was being threatened.
Right.
And
yeah, there's a line about Planned Parenthood.
Bad time.
Yeah. That was, I found it very striking because it was, you know, kind of simultaneously saying, like, women deserve to be able to have casual sex, or rather, people with uteruses deserve to be able to have casual sex without having to, you know, have this burden of, am I going to get pregnant by someone I don't want to get pregnant by? And am I not going to be able to access the care that I need when that happens? And, you know, the song was so interesting in that it was talking about that simultaneously, and it was talking about, you know, the pressure that you feel, you know, especially if you're dating like cis men, about, you know, be sure that you don't get pregnant, but also be sure that sex feels as good for me as physically possible. And that's like a very crazy dichotomy that I think scares a lot of people to even talk about. You know, and I think a lot of your lyrics definitely, from what I can tell at least, you know, point to sort of those things, which is something that I appreciate. But growing up in Oslo, that probably wasn't an issue, right? You have healthcare in Oslo.
Yeah. I mean, I think sexual health for young adults and teens could be better everywhere.
Yes, absolutely.
but it's definitely easier to kind of get the things you need, and like possibly more people to talk to as well. Right.
Or at least without going into debt.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And so was that a real shock coming here, like realizing that, you know, the system here, was that something you realized right away, that the healthcare system here and that our, you know, aid is just not the same, especially for women?
When I first moved here, I was like, I'm invincible, because I was 19. But
naturally.
Yeah, the past few years I've been like, oh shit, this is a problem. I just got health insurance last year. Hasn't done anything for me. It's like the mafia.
Right. Yeah.
But okay, I don't understand it.
Honestly, I don't think anybody does. I think that that's the point of healthcare in the United States, is to confuse people into just going into so much debt that their lives are ruined. It's really, really, really insane. And I often think about people who come here from other countries, how truly insane it must seem when you're so used to being able to just go to the doctor when you're sick. Like, that's normal. Like, I still, I have healthcare, I have a job, I'm lucky in that way, but still, when I'm sick, like, my husband will be like, you got to go to the doctor. And I'm like, no, it's just going to cost $1 million. They're not going to do anything. Right. Like, it's not worth it. Like, it's just like, don't bother. When it's like, why would you do that? Right? Good. Yeah. Did you notice, or have you noticed, living in the States, like a lot of cultural differences in those ways? Because I know that in the States, I think people tend to view Nordic countries as the ideal world. They're like, you know, doing socialism correctly. They have healthcare, they have education. It's beautiful. Like, it's, you know, I think that people tend to view it as being this kind of paradise where everything is okay. Is that kind of, compared to the United States, is that what it is?
I think compared to the United States, these countries don't want their people to be sick.
Yes.
And that's a huge, I don't know if that's like paradise, but...
Seems pretty basic, right?
Yeah.
Seems like that should be like pretty low standard.
Pretty low standard. But if that's the standard, it's fucking paradise.
Yeah, you know, like there was a documentary a few years ago, I think it was Michael Moore who did it, where they went to the highest security prison in, I think it was Norway, right?
I've been to that prison.
You have? Wow. In what context? Did you go there for fun? Or I spent 10 years in there.
I actually went there.
Someone? I didn't know.
I just found it really interesting that someone's trying to make someone made a prison that is just focused on rehabilitation. And so I went to visit and went to see their music studio and their kitchen.
They have a music studio?
Yeah.
Wow.
I was going to be part of their Christmas musical, but I didn't have the time.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
But it was really special to be in there. I mean, it was weird for many reasons, but
Did you get to like meet and talk to the prisoners themselves?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah,
And-
Wow. It's just like an open
It's just
space.
an island.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, when I watched the documentary, what was so jarring to me about it was, you know, these people, though they seem to be in, you know, a house that in Los Angeles would probably cost $5,000 a month or whatever. It was like nice, and it was a nice island, and they, you know, got to do, you know, all the various things that you should be able to do as a human. Seeing that, you know, from the United States, like prison here is degrading. You're trapped in a room. It's essentially torture, you know, it's crazy. And it was interesting to see the prisoners, you know, despite being in this nice island, it'd be like, you know, yeah, it's nice, but I feel like I'm in prison, and I feel like I am.
Yeah, you're still,
because of course you are, right? And it's interesting. I mean, I don't know if I doubt you've ever visited a prison in the United States necessarily. I know I haven't, but it just seems like such a symptom of how unhealthy this country is comparatively, you know, that should be bare minimum, I think.
Yeah, I visited that prison because I wanted to make a comparison, but I haven't gotten there yet.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a much different and tougher experience to visit an American prison, I would imagine. A lot of like rigmarole to go over it. But is that...
Yeah.
I know here at Mary Jane, being a cannabis company, we, or at least I, am very interested in and focused in criminal justice reform, because obviously, you know, cannabis is something that Black and brown people have gone to prison for en masse for many, many, many years. And now we have a lot of people making a lot of money off of it. And I think it's our responsibility to do something about it. So, you know, that's definitely a subject that has always interests me a lot. Is that why you visited that prison? Is that a subject that interests you too?
Yeah, well, I guess what piqued my interest is what's it called in engelsk? It's just our maximum time you can be in prison is 21 years, and
wow,
and
really?
here we and
life sentences here.
Yeah,
you can have multiple life sentences. In fact, like
so that's kind of that was kind of the biggest difference to me.
Right, and that interested you.
Yeah, I think it's insane to be locked up for life.
Yeah,
and
it is.
Not focus on rehabilitating people and putting them back into the world.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, people just leave jail and then immediately go back to jail. That's
and it's made for that. It's like a cyclical. I think for people who are incarcerated or institutionalized, you're expected to come back,
right?
And you're never expected to be able to like fully functioning in society.
It's designed for you to constantly be in this cycle that it's impossible to escape once you've entered it.
Yeah, and I find that really spooky.
It is. It's really spooky. Yeah, it's completely fucked up. It's crazy.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, having said that, it's interesting because, you know, obviously the United States is full of immigrants. We're extremely mixed, and unfortunately, you know, we have a criminal justice system that is racist and that, you know, is putting Black and brown people in jail, you know, at insane rates compared to white people. And that's horrifying. And we also have like a racist president who's a fucking nightmare. And it's like a whole situation.
Love it here.
Yeah. But, you know, in Norway, though, I mean, it's like 90% white or more, right? That's and so that's, I can only imagine a big cultural difference in terms of, I'm not even sure what. It's obviously a less racist country systematically because, you know, they're not literally imprisoning and forcing labor on Black people, as far as I know. But, you know, was that a difference for you in terms of just being able to be around people who are more culturally different?
I mean, I grew up in Norway with my 3 brothers, and we were the only Black people on the island.
On the whole island.
But it was 15,000 people on the island. That's kind of a lot of people.
15,000 people. You were the only ones.
Yeah, I remember it like in the 90s and then back in the 90s. So it's a pretty homogenous place to grow up. And I think that's why I wanted to move very, like, from a young age. So, like, I was always thinking about London or New York. And I went to London and I went to New York. And it's very different. But yeah, the racism in Norway is completely different, I think.
In what way?
Because there aren't any people of color there.
Right.
No, that's not true. It's actually in the 80s and 90s, a lot of immigrants from Pakistan and Somalia came.
Okay.
So Oslo is pretty diverse now.
But not
Yeah.
when you were growing up there or in that island necessarily.
Not on the peninsula.
Yeah. And
No.
what sort of differences did you see between, the types of racism, or if you experienced that in Oslo versus in the United States? Do you think it's more casual, or is there a difference?
Yeah, there's not just like full blown hate that
Right.
is like, it's not like, it doesn't feel like a system that's made to put people against each other necessarily. It just more seems like ignorance and fear, but not the fear that Americans feel here. I think not the like building a wall fear. It's more like, who the fuck is,
Right.
like, what's that culture about, you know?
Like it's more on a personal level
Yeah.
as opposed to like a systematic.
Yeah. I feel like the most annoying thing growing up in Norway for me, I don't really know what it's like to grow up for anyone else there, was just being othered. Or then, constantly othered for like a way that you look.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And that was something you experienced from a young age there, just sort of feeling like I don't look like these people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then that was okay.
Right.
That was something that people always told me, and I was like, yeah, of course it's okay.
Right, everybody looks different.
Yeah. But not in Norway.
Yeah, yeah.
But apart from that, it was a pretty good place to grow up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you recommend it? Like, if I were to have a baby right now, would you say take that baby to Oslo?
I would say take it to like Denmark.
Denmark.
Yeah, I love Denmark.
I was in Denmark a few years ago. My first book was translated, and I got invited to read at a poetry festival there. And
cool.
I went to Christiania. Have you ever been there?
Yeah.
So for anyone who doesn't know, it's kind of like where you can go buy weed in Denmark. It's like the Venice Beach of Denmark.
Totally.
That was definitely an interesting experience, because the rest of Denmark was not the most, like, I didn't see people smoking weed. I was like asking, and people were kind of like, I don't have weed. Like, what do you want from me? Do you think that vibe is similar in Norway with weed? Like, were you around weed growing up in Norway? Like, did you
hash.
see it or no? It was hash mostly.
Yeah.
Okay. And was that very common?
No, I just had friends who smoked hash, I think. Yeah, it's not, I mean, Denmark, like, I remember as teens, like, I didn't smoke that much weed as a teen either, but we would talk about Christiania as like a mecca, and like were like, Denmark was so progressive for us.
That was like, had you been there, or was that before you had been there?
Before I'd been there, and then we went, like, we'd go on like a big like trip, and you were so excited because you can like make an exchange and buy drugs or whatever.
Wow.
Yeah, so Norway's even more.
It's more strict.
Yeah.
Oh wow. And so
Yeah.
there wasn't really like a culture surrounding weed the way there is in the United States.
No.
Wow, that's so
I would say,
interesting.
but also just that's my experience.
Right,
I don't
right.
think so.
And so Denmark tends to be, because when I went to Denmark, I remember walking around a festival being like, who has weed? I want to smoke weed. And people were looking at me like, are you fucking insane? Like, stop asking people for weed. But that's kind of the more accepting of weed part of the Netherlands, like, or the Nordic countries. Is that?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
And so you did visit Denmark then when you got a little bit older?
Yeah, I used to go to this festival outside of Copenhagen called Roskilde Festival.
Wow, say that again?
Roskilde Festival.
Wow, I love that.
Because, it was really hard to go to shows in Norway unless you were 18. And so, like, I would go to this one festival each year and see performers from all
So
over
shows
the
were
world.
all ages. They were like...
You can, like, go camp there from, like, whenever you wanted. So on one of those trips, I went to Copenhagen, and then I went to Christiania. And
Oh, okay. And was that like,
Yeah.
was that big for you? Was it like
Yeah, it
as
was
exciting as you
big.
thought?
Yeah, it was a big deal. I won an iPod, and I sold an iPod, and I got on a bus, and then I like went on my first festival. It was pretty cool.
So you sold the iPod to be able to go to the festival?
Yeah, it's a good iPod.
Man, gotta get that iPod back.
Yeah.
Gotta find whoever you sold it to. Was it
Remember those iPods where you could just get everyone else's music? Like, you could just like stick it in like a USB, and it was like a hard drive. Like,
Wow.
now
That
you
sounds
can't do that
amazing.
anymore. But like, you just had this crazy library of music.
How early was that? Was that like an early iPod, or was that like
it was
a
like
more...
the first one?
Oh, okay, I see. That makes sense. Damn, that was like such a good feature. I want an old iPod now.
Yeah.
Maybe if we both got old iPods, we could just like share our library still. You
Yeah.
know? I'll bet there's some still in the package.
Anyone have an old iPod.
Anybody, please. And so I want to talk a little bit about your album too. So when did you come out with it? What was when was the album officially released?
It was released June 1st.
Okay, great. So recently.
Yeah.
And have you been on tour?
Yeah, kind of. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I have been. I went on tour most of fall. Or actually, I went on tour with Eamon Dunes. Do you know this guy?
I've heard, yeah. Maybe just from stalking you online, though.
I went on tour with those guys in summer in North America, and then I did a little Europe tour in October.
Nice. Did you get to play in Oslo?
I got to play in Oslo.
How was that?
It was cool. It was a lot of friends and family. Something happened. I don't remember. It was an event. Apparently I was cracking too many jokes on stage. It was just like, I don't even know that I do that.
Cracking too many jokes? According to who?
There was a reviewer who was like, I don't know if performing music is Kaya hanging out with her friends from a stage. And I was like, I don't know either.
That sounds great to me.
That's what happened. It's really lonely up there.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Like it's just very spread out or something?
No, it's just very lonely to play alone on the stage. So I'm always trying to like hang out with the audience.
I feel like that's the sign of a good performance, right? If you're trying to connect with the audience.
Yeah, I don't know.
Sounds more fun to me than not, right?
Yeah, maybe. I think I might need a band.
Oh, I see. So you play alone on stage.
Yeah, that's what. Hence the cry wanking.
I see. So it's just you and a guitar. Is that?
Yeah, but in a lot of the music videos, I clone myself, so I kind of pretend to do that on stage a little bit too now.
How do you do that?
I just sort of like go from one side of the stage to the other, and then high five myself like this.
You hold up one.
Yeah.
All right, now I have to go over here and grab this one.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good move. I like that.
Yeah.
Sounds complicated.
That feels less lonely.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. I don't know.
So do you think that if you were ever able to actually clone yourself, like that would be the ideal band? Just clones of you, no belly buttons, just doing everything behind you? That
would be a very arrogant thing to do, but yes.
I mean, it sounds good to me, you know? Then each individual Kaya can try to befriend individual members of the audience.
And then only one of them would have to go on tour.
Exactly. Then you could just rest while Clone Kaya does the whole touring. You can write the music at home, like problem solved.
Yeah. Yeah, I really want an avatar. You know how like they're going to do one of Amy Winehouse, which is...
Like a hologram?
Yeah. No, yeah, have a hologram.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think that we, in some capacity, were responsible for the Tupac hologram at Coachella.
Whoa.
Maybe I can set up a meeting with my boss to talk about getting 6 Kaya holograms behind you.
Yeah, it would be cool. I mean, just instead of me.
Right. Just send the hologram out, and then they can do the whole tour. Honestly, that seems like the future of music for musicians.
I really want to write to someone who could hook that up before I die, so I can chill more.
Yeah, I'll hook you up with my boss. Maybe he'll be able to tell you how they got the Tupac hologram.
Cool, thank you.
It was real Tupac. He's still alive. Don't tell anyone. So have you always played on stage completely by yourself? Have you ever had a backing band or anything?
I had a band for like 2 shows and it was the best. I got some people together, but it's it's tricky. Maybe this year.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll get some more funding and then I can take some people on tour and then we can be a band.
Nice.
Yeah, we'll see.
Nice. And so what's coming next for OK Kaya as a project? Are you working on more albums? Are you going to be doing more shows? What's the next thing?
I'll probably say both of those things. I'm working on a record right now. That's why I'm here.
Oh, great.
Yeah. In Venice.
Oh, you're working on one in Venice. Very nice. That's my favorite city.
Yeah.
And when can we expect it? Do you have a release date yet, or is it still in the very preliminary stages?
No release date. Probably. I like the idea of 2020.
Yeah. 2020.
Yeah, probably 2020.
That's a good year. It's even, right?
Yeah.
Nice. And do you have any upcoming shows or anything like that? Any acting, modeling? You're so multi-talented. I don't know what to ask about now.
So slashy.
Slashy is good. It's better than not being slashy.
I feel like it's There's some stuff coming up. I don't remember anymore.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll definitely if there's anything that we can plug in the description of the podcast, we absolutely will send it our way. But mostly, we can expect a million new exciting things coming from you in the future. Is that right?
Yeah, all the time.
Yeah, 1 million, 10 million,
super
20
productive,
million.
very creative.
Great. Well, thank you to our sponsors, the Green Angels, for their lovely weed, and thank you for listening to Queens of the Stoned Age. And remember to subscribe and like us on Apple Podcasts. And you can also email my boss at scott@maryjane.com and tell him that I'm doing an amazing job and that I'm fantastic. And thank you, OK Kaya, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Bye.
Bye.
I'm chilling with the Queens of the Stone Age.